Well, hi class. I hope you enjoyed last week's module on the process of communication, and hopefully you were able to get a really good grasp and an understanding of what is going on in the process of communication. And I think when you really examine that process, you find out there's a lot more at work. And as I said last week, a lot of times we just take communication for granted, but there's a lot going on in the process. There's also a lot that we can do to improve that overall process. So I hope you learned some great things last week. This week, probably the most important module to a lot of you, because this week we're going to focus on how to deal with speech apprehension. That's a fancy word to describe the nervousness that most people feel right before they give a presentation. And some people, they'll start feeling it days before the presentation. But the focus of this module is to come to an understanding of why we get nervous when we speak in public, and then more importantly, what are some things we can do to control and manage that nervous anxiety. And notice too, I'm emphasizing manage and control the nervous anxiety, because you're not going to get to the point where you aren't nervous when you speak in public. I mean, you could get to that point. You could take a couple shots of Jose or burn a big fatty. You're not going to feel nervous, but your speech won't be very effective. So we've got to focus on what are effective techniques that we can apply, what are principles that we can follow that will help us control and alleviate the nervous anxiety, and really the goal that you're after. When it comes to public speaking and dealing with nervous anxiety, you want to be the only one who knows that you're nervous. So we want to manage it so it doesn't disrupt or interrupt or have any kind of negative effect on the overall presentation. And so really when it comes to dealing with nervous anxiety, there's lots of different things you can do. But for me, the two most important things that you can do, first would be to practice, and second, use positive affirmations. I know you were probably expecting some guy, what's the magic potion we drink? What helps us get over that nervous anxiety? Nah, it's really nothing secret or special. You want to control the nervous anxiety? Then practice your speech. In fact, the prescription I like to give out, if you really want to ensure that that anxiety is not going to disrupt the speech at all, you've got it completely under control, then a good rule to follow is always practice your speeches out loud, a minimum of 10 times before you give the presentation. So you want to get into the habit, and you'll find when we get to our next speech assignments, and we've got instruction for the next couple weeks, we'll get to the next assigned speech. That'll be the critic speech. That'll be a couple weeks on down the road in the semester, and then we'll get to the informative and the persuasive speeches. Those are kind of your big three speeches that we'll get to a little bit later in the semester. But with each of those assignments, you'll be required to turn in your outline for the speech 1 week in advance of the date where you'll actually give your video presentation. And the reason I do that is I'm really trying to teach you that the best way to deal with speech preparation and the best way to be an effective public speaker and control the nervous anxiety is to get into the habit of always having your speeches written at least 1 week in advance of the due date, and then you use that week to practice your speech over and over. What I'll teach you is in that week leading up to each presentation, practice your speech out loud 3 times a day, every day, up until the presentation. If you do that, I promise you, even though you still may feel a little nervous anxiety, you'll be the only one who knows because you've got your speech down so well. What that practice does, that builds our confidence. And the more confident that we feel, the more positive we feel about the speech presentation coming up, then the less anxiety we're going to feel and the easier it is to control that nervous anxiety. So really, when it comes to public speaking and dealing with nervous anxiety, you just have to put in the work. And I know a lot of you, one of your goals for the semester, how can I control that nervous anxiety? The key is to put in the practice. 10 times before you give the presentation, You always want to practice your speech out loud. And then if you can get a couple times where you can actually practice in front of people, mom, dad, brother and sister, somebody around the house, right? Where you get those eyes looking back at you, then it makes it even easier to deal with that nervous anxiety. So the key is practice. And then the second is to use lots of positive affirmations. I'm a big believer in we are what we tell ourselves we are. And so if you really want to change your behaviors and your attitudes, change the way you communicate with yourself. Instead of, I'm so terrified, I don't want to give this speech. You know what? It's not that comfortable, but this is something I can do. I can be a pretty good speaker. I'm a really good speaker. I can control the nervous anxiety. I love public speaking. So you can kind of change language and build yourself up. Positive affirmations. I know it sounds a little corny, but eventually we buy into what we tell ourselves about ourselves, and that's a great way to build your confidence and to control the nervous anxiety that's associated with public speaking. And then just a last thing real quick. You never want to begin a speech with any kind of disclaimer. Every once in a while, I'll get a student, I'll get up and right before their speech, please bear with me, I'm really, really nervous. No, audience doesn't need to know that. So anytime you begin a speech or anytime during the speech, no disclaimers, no apologies to the audience. Don't tell the audience what they don't need to know. All right? So this week, you're going to learn a lot about dealing with the nervous anxiety. There's a lot more things you can do, but the two biggest things from my perspective, practice, 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 positive affirmations, best way to deal with nervous anxiety. All right. And then the last thing that I want to go over today is I just want to make sure that everybody's doing all right as far as navigating through Canvas. I haven't had any trouble with any students yet, but just to point out a few things, I want to make sure that for this class, there's no confusion on assignments or anything like that. The key is to stay on the module. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead and pop up my screen. I want to take a look at the modules and just give you a couple guidelines to follow to make sure that you have no problems navigating through the class this semester. Okay, so now we're on the modules for the class. And so as we just kind of scroll down the modules, this is your guide, all right? So in this class, right, you can go to the home page, syllabus, and modules, all right? Now, sometimes you go to your grades too, but for this class, don't need to go to anything else. Home, syllabus, and the modules. And then once you start working through the modules, you just go from one module to the next, just like we're doing with the class. All right, right here, we're on week 4. So we're just going from here to here to here to here. We've got our assignments down here at the end. So typically in the modules too, we've got instruction, then you'll have a quiz, then you'll either have a writing assignment or you'll have a video that you turn in as an assignment. So as we navigate through the semester, you just stay on the modules. If you find an assignment elsewhere on Canvas, but you don't see it listed anywhere here in one of the modules, you aren't responsible for the information. Now, just to kind of exemplify that, I want to go ahead and let's go to grades, and I'm going to use the test student. All right, and so notice here, and obviously the test student hasn't been doing a good job, hasn't been turning their work in, but I want to show you what can happen. So let's get down here to the critic speech. And again, this is a little bit later, but notice here, you'll have submit, right here, submit and view critic speeches assignments. All right, cool. But then right under it, it says critic speech video. And these are the two same assignments, but you're not responsible for this one. And the reason that happened too is they gave me an 8-week class right before the semester started. And so I had to scramble, and I was just copying and moving stuff over from one Canvas page to the next. So in this Canvas shell, I've got a lot of duplicates, right? None of the duplicates will show up on the modules, right? So if we go back to the grades and we go, okay, once we get to the critic speeches, it'll show critic speech video, which isn't one of our assignments, right, for this class. It'll say that it's missing. And you go, oh, wait, no, I submitted my critic speech. What's the problem? All right, well, let's go over here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check and see, is the critic speech video, is it on one of the modules? Now let's go to the module on the critic speech, and you'll notice, no, it's not, just the submit and view critic speeches. So again, if you see something on grades and it says missing, you're only responsible for that if that assignment is listed under one of the modules. And I know that's a little confusing. I just haven't had the time to go back in and to clean up all the duplicates. And I don't know that I will during the semester. I mean, it's just online, and especially for someone who doesn't type very fast. I mean, I am just constantly grading. I have almost 200 students. So that's why it's important that you make sure you follow directions. You just stick to the modules. If you find an assignment somewhere it says missing or whatever, if it's not on the modules here, don't worry about it. You're not responsible for that information. All right? Okay. That's it for me. It was cool having some of you in at the start, and I didn't mean to kick everybody out. I just had to figure out how to get the window. I don't like doing a video where it just has a little window and then all you guys, your names with your mics muted. So I'll figure that out and get that done, because I really like the fact that you're showing up to the Zoom meetings. It's always nice to have an audience. All right, so we'll get that dialed in next week. I hope you guys show up. And remember, anytime you have any questions, right, you can send me an email, but also show up right at the start of class every Monday at 2 o'clock. Any questions, I'll be there to answer any questions and to give you any help that I can. Again, I mentioned this last week, but finished up the instructional videos. You guys did a really good job. We have a lot of talent in this class. And once I get all of you so where you're comfortable and we're controlling that nervous anxiety, we can see those personalities come out a little bit more. I really expect we're going to have some really entertaining and interesting speeches from all of you as we navigate through the semester. That's the cool thing about my job. Not only do I get to hang out with college students, but I get to learn from you and all the cool stuff you guys have in your speeches. All right, have a good week. We'll see you guys. Oh, next week is a holiday, so we will not have a Zoom recording on next Monday. It'll be 2 weeks from Monday. All right, take care, you guys. Be safe.